Hello world, this is Jeffrey, JJB146 Blake for Hoopa Hideout, and I'm coming to you today with the first part in what will be a couple different series. So first, we're going to be doing a series over Klawf versus other matchups. That's what we're showing today. Second, we're going to be showing a series of how to combat stall with different decks. So today we combine the two together because we have Klawf versus stall. Now this is one of the easier stall matchups because you do have poison damage that forces their hands a lot of the time, but you'll see it's still a slow process to get through it all unless they just give up, but you will get there. I've never lost with Klawf against Snorlax stall, and actually this matchup was worse than usual because they had some interesting techs that caused me some trouble. Now before we get into it, I do want to just shout out real quick, if you could subscribe to the channel, leave me a like, and maybe more important than either of those, although subscribing really does help me out, but leave a comment just saying what you think, right? If I'm doing great, if you like this kind of content, if you like the idea of these series of different videos showing different matchups for different decks, that's my plan going forward, is to do more of those. I'm not going to say how many I'll get to, I'm not going to say how many decks I'll cover, but that's my focus. That's always been the thing that I felt like YouTube lacked. But if you don't like that idea, or you think I'm doing it wrong and I could do it better somehow, let me know, and I will adjust how I do things as best I can. It's still a learning process, even though I've got hundreds of videos up here. It's a learning process for me every day, trying to figure out how to make better content. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into the actual gameplay. The first thing you'll see is obviously the coin flip, and we'll just get going from there. So our opponent flips. They chose tails, that means they lose the flip. We get to choose. And with Klawf, you want to go second every single time against any deck you're facing, because you can almost always attack turn one. Now, we're against stall. I could probably get to an attack turn one. I'm going to have to think about whether it's worth it or not, because we do have to discard some cards to have a real shot at getting there. Of course, they come down, they get a couple of Snorlaxes set up. Search for a supporter. And Erica's invitation. So Erica's can be really interesting with Klawf because you can set things up. If you have a Pokemon that can attack, that you're going to let them pull up, it can be fantastic. Now, okay, so here, I'm not actually necessarily going to be able to attack because of that Pokemon League headquarters. That's the tech that I mentioned that they're running in this match that makes things a whole lot harder for Klawf. Usually your attackers need either 0 energies or 1 energy attachment to attack. So here I'm looking specifically and almost exclusively for another stadium, for one of my 4 stadiums. I thought about playing the nest ball. Maybe I go ahead and play it. This would be to get the Radiant Sneasler so the poison damage will start adding up for them, because we want it to be taking that full 30 count every time. And we don't care if our Pokemon are poisoned at all. Like, that's the funny thing, is that they'll start bringing up things that can't attack, right? And as long as the Pokemon that they bring up can get poisoned, that's almost better for us, because eventually it leads to them taking prizes that they don't want to take. So waiting on them to make their decisions here. I will probably, when they're taking lots of time to think things through, I'm probably going to speed through some of that in this video, just so it's not as mind-numbingly boring as it otherwise could end up being. Just notice that the timer isn't fully on the screen, so we'll fix that. Unfortunately, time is a factor that, or I guess I should rather say, unfortunately, in live tournaments, time is not a factor. So some of the techniques that work playing online aren't going to work as well on IRL tournaments because you force their hand. They end up spending more time on their turns than you spend on yours. So a lot of times they end up having to just, make something happen for the clock for no other reason than the clock. But we've got a while to go before that becomes a factor. They play a Switch Cart right away to go ahead and heal off that damage. I don't know why they did that so soon, because it's just going to happen again. But they're going ahead, they're getting their draws set up. And we've got that Squawkabilly that we're just going to ignore. We could have thought about doing Squawkabilly turn 1 to dig further to try to get rid of their stadium, but I didn't think it was worth it to burn up our cards, so that's why I didn't. And we're just going to go ahead, re-poison them. Doesn't matter that we've ticked into 30 as well, because they aren't going to let us get knocked out. And if they do, oh well. We do play a recovery card in the form of Roseanne's backup, which will get back a double turbo, and it'll get back a stadium and a tool and Pokemon. So that really can help our recovery for bringing back, you know, a bit of everything that they can get rid of to help us further along. And here they played the Ericas. Unfortunately, we did have the Brute Bonnet that can really mess us over a little bit for them to put in the active. But we play a few switching cards, so it's not a big deal by any means. And they do have to go ahead and leave their Snorlax in, so he takes another hit of 30 damage. And now it's back to us. I'm pondering here whether it's worth it to try to switch out immediately, and whether it's worth it to try to go ahead and poison myself or not. Ultimately, I kind of decide that it might be worth it. So what I end up doing, I'm thinking about the Nest Ball to get an Electrode V. And just glancing through, trying to decide what exactly I'd want to do. So I do decide to go with the Nest Ball. And I think I may have gone for, I went for the Force Steel Stone as well. And the thinking here is that, okay, and I changed my mind. I just got the Switch Cart. Okay. I was going back and forth between the two. If we're doing the Switch Cart, we can either use it now and attach and attack, but that's not really worthwhile. We can save it for later. And those two cards just kind of prep us for when we get a little bit further in. We have the Force Steel Stone ready to make use of it when we eventually get to our V Pokemon. They're just over here going, alright, everything's going great for us. We're just going to keep tracking along. They're going to use Misfortune Sisters to try to get rid of some of our items. We don't love that, but it's not going to be too big of a deal. And what we want to see is for them to start using Penny over and over, because they usually don't play enough copies that they can use it frequently enough to cycle the Snorlaxes away from taking 60 damage per turn from poison. They end up just hitting a Spicy Season Curry, which is a card we'd love to have still in our hand, but not one we need to worry about too much. We do hit a Nest Ball here, and I think I'd probably go ahead and get the Electrode V. Looking at it now, I definitely would. But I'm probably not going to attach anything. I'm just going to get the Electrode, have him on the bench for later purposes, so we could eventually attach the Force Steel Stone. We could eventually use that V-Star power to take a knockout. And there's definitely no point in using the Switch Cart, because they're going to get knocked out. Suddenly all of their counter catchers are active, which means they would just immediately bring up something else. But we are primed and ready for go time next turn. We can take 2 more prizes next turn quite easily, and that's what we're lining up to do, basically. They go ahead, they play Avery. That doesn't bother me a bit. I'm actually going to drop the Brute Bonnet that we've had on the bench, and that's going to make them think, oh, well, we don't have to worry about him anymore. But right away next turn, we're going to go ahead, get the other Ancient Booster Capsule online, attached to the active Brute Bonnet, play the Switch Cart, and get rolling that way. They do use their V-Star now, right before we get around to taking out the Rotom, but that's fine. And we'll see if we can tell what they get. They can't use another supporter this turn, so looks like they just got another Snorlax. It's interesting that they had a V-Star for that, but that's fine. And you can see already, we have more cards left in deck than they do. Now, granted, they have more cards in hand than we do, but they're going to have to start scrambling and using a lot more stuff than we will. And that's I guess kind of the key in how I approach matchups against Stall, is that I want them to end up using up more stuff than I use. Now, we did top deck the Town Store, which is amazing to us. I go ahead and move the other Klawf over. And the reason for that, I was thinking about wanting to be able to discard a Pokemon, wanting to limit what they were able to do. And then I thought about it a little longer and decided that it didn't really matter if they could get Squawkabilly into the active. It wasn't going to affect things much, and in fact could lead to some kind of fun shenanigans where they end up taking 2 prizes off of the Squawkabilly because they didn't plan it right. The more prizes they take, the worse their game is, because when we get to our Ionos, it leaves them with fewer and fewer cards. We get another, we do take the Rotom down there. I guess I could have talked about what we were doing, but I sort of had prequelled it already. We bossed up Rotom, we used the Switch Cart, and then attacked with Klawf because we were able to replace their stadium. And I haven't attached the Forest Sealstone. Since we have multiple copies, I probably should, but we haven't yet, and that's fine. So they are quick on the draw with the custom catcher to go ahead and bring up that Brute Bonnet again. And we'll see if they're going to do anything else. Play a Peonia to look through some of their prize cards. And swap them out. And here, I think I might jump the gun in playing the Escape Rope. I'm not sure if I play it immediately or if I wait a little while. But I feel like I should wait a little while. Should go ahead and let Poison rack up some damage and kind of make them a little miserable. That said, we don't know how many copies of their stadium they play. So as long as Town Store's in the active there, it might be worth it to go ahead and play the Escape Rope just to take another knockout right away. I'm using Town Store here to go through. There's nothing we really need, but I do want to check numbers for a few different cards in the deck. So I'm checking to see, I wanted to make sure Roseanne's backup was there. I wanted to see how many stadiums and energies we have. And then I'm trying to decide if I want to actually grab a tool or not. Ultimately, I'm pretty sure I decided not to, because more cards in the deck is more cards in the deck, and that's what we prefer to have. I think I counted, I know there's at least one more Switch Cart in there, and there might be something else for switching. So I don't hate this Escape Rope play, since it will give us another knockout. I'd sort of like to pair this with an Iono, but I don't know that that's worth wasting our Forest Sealstone on. And ultimately, with where we're at, if we can get 2 Switch cards from now, like at this point going forward, if we can play Switch twice, we win. That's all it comes down to. Nothing else in the game matters. We are always going to be able to take one-hit knockouts on their Snorlaxes. So as long as we can attack 2 more times, we're going to win the game. We have 30 cards left to find a way to do that. And Poison gives an extra out to force their hand, so we don't necessarily even have to find the 2 Switch cards to do that. Now, all of that said, I do not have a Switch card in hand, so I'll go ahead and poison them. We also don't have a stadium, so we wouldn't be able to attack anyway. I think I choose to go ahead and play the Avery. We're never going to care about the size of their bench, but we do draw into a Switch card. So now we need to just decide if it's time to pull the cord on that Forest Sealstone and actually go ahead and get the stadium out of the way. I think I decided that it's not worth it yet to go ahead and waste our V-Star power on taking this knockout and leaving ourselves with 1. But in retrospect, I don't mind that play here if you wanted to make it, if you were playing this. They end up playing Misfortune Sisters. And I think virtually every time they played Misfortune Sisters, they found 1 card. Oh, I said that. They didn't find anything this time. Our deck is clogged with supporters and energy and tools more than items. So most of the items that are even left are pretty unimportant. I'm pretty sure there are no switch cards left. Okay, so we go ahead. I replace the town store. I'm immediately going to check and see how many switch cards we have left, if any. If we have 2, I'm immediately going to go ahead and take a knockout this turn. We do not have any, however. And we don't have a way to recover those. Switch cards are the only thing, just about the only thing we can't recover. I guess we don't have any way to strictly recover supporters either. But because of that, I go ahead and decide to let the damage tick down further. I'm not sure if that's the right play or not. If we take a knockout here, they're going to have to find another Pokemon to bring active. But my thinking was, once again, that we'd rather Iono them while taking that knockout. And again, for Sealstone to do the Iono play would be one path that I think might have been better than just trying to go ahead and get that knockout first, because what's going to eventually happen is that they will play their own disruption supporter, and I won't have access to the switch card immediately. So I kind of think that I'm playing it too slow. And this is where they came out with Gyakumo, who obviously makes our job a lot harder. And then they play Temple of Sinnoh on top of that. The Temple doesn't really matter to us because we do have those spicy season curries in hand. We do have still the ability for Brute Bonnet to poison, so we can end up attacking with Electrode V if we need to. And I go ahead and decide at this point that it's better to attach that Forest Sealstone, even if I'm not using it, just in case they come around and decide to disrupt with an Iono. We're close enough now that I think it makes sense to let them waste resources healing the Snorlax, or to just let it die by poison. And I'm pretty sure they're going to have to, yeah, they go ahead, they do play the Penny. I was like, they pretty much have to play Penny at this point, or else we're going to have a very easy victory. So the Bravery Charms come back down. And as far as time-wise, you can see that we've been taking our time on our turns. You know, we haven't rushed our decisions. We aren't like rushing to click that, you know, next turn button or anything. But we're still up on them by 3.5 minutes. And we certainly could play faster if we needed to. But like I said, that's only a condition, only a win condition when you're playing online. So I go ahead, I do the Toxic Powder. If I thought for just a moment, I would have waited on that, but I didn't. I didn't think about it, so that's that. The reason I say I would have waited, I could have switched card, once again, I could have switch carded in and attacked with the Electrode. And here they decide to get cute and bring up the Radiant Sneasler. I guess figuring that now it's going to be harder for me because I'm going to be poisoning myself. Obviously, it ticking at 60 per turn by the time you've gone back and forth versus it ticking at 20 per turn, it's going to add up on them much faster. And as I've said, we play a way to recover the Pokemon, so we can get Radiant Sneasler back even if it goes down due to poison damage. Them bossing up a Pokemon that will die to poison actually gives us an extra win condition because we can set things up so that poison knocks out our Pokemon, allowing us to promote the right thing to get an attack without having to play a switch card. So we go ahead, start the poison run, and just keep going. Now once again, they did reset things with Penny. You could argue that we want to go ahead there and actually take a knockout before we start in on these shenanigans. But I choose to go ahead and make poison be the thing for a little bit longer. Again, the chief benefit would have been forcing them to have a way to get an additional Pokemon. I play more Misfortune Sisters yet again, and end up getting rid of an Ultra Ball. Maybe 2 items there. Maybe it was an Ultra Ball and something else, but certainly nothing meaningful since our Switch Cart is in our hands. Alright, we have a Bravery Charm, and the Bravery Charm is extra spicy for the poison play that I mentioned, because we can always attach to it, like attach the Bravery Charm to the Radiant Sneasler so that we can shift whether it's going to get knocked out on their turn versus ours. So we can fine-tune things so that it always gets knocked out coming back into our turn. But we don't need to attach it yet. Here, I chose to wait on playing the Town Store. That might be a mistake because, you know, there's the Sydney supporter out there that some Snorlax builds are playing that will discard a Stadium and a Special Energy and tools for that matter. So we have our hand kind of primed for Sydney to really hurt us. But all of that can be recovered with Roseanne's backup. So I think we're still fine, even if they managed to play a Sydney here, which I'm pretty sure they didn't have in deck by the time we finished the match. And speaking of time, we're now 5-6 minutes ahead of them on the clock. They did get an additional Snorlax out now, so our hope of possibly playing Iono to ruin their chances of being able to use Penny has been dashed for sure. And we're just going to try to let damage tick down and lead us to a knockout. I do play a Switch Cart, starting things over fresh. And then an Iono. So the Iono there worries me just a little in that Misfortune Sisters now could be a card that hurts us further. Could actually be a card that leads us to have problems. They also got back their Gaiacomo. So I think at this point it's probably worth it to start thinking about going ahead and making a play. I end up deciding to play Arven to get the switching cart. And I grab a Bravery Charm again. No specific reason on the Bravery Charm, but I decided not to attack, largely because I went a little too early with the Toxic Powder, so I already had used up my poison, so I wouldn't be able to attack for knockout yet. And then they decide to get tricky and use the Lost Vacuum to get rid of the poison tool. And they go ahead to play a Silene, get 2 tails on the Silene, and that's looking beautiful to me. So I think now is when I decide to go ahead and strike, because they only have 3 cards in hand. So it's very possible that if we take a knockout now, we'll be set and they won't be able to recover. That's at least what I'm thinking about. So I expect you're going to see me attach the Double Turbo Energy, play the Switch Cart, and then also use the Forest Seal Stone to get a replacement Stadium with our last Town Store, just so that we can search out, I mean not just, so we can replace their stadium, which makes us able to attack with that DTE, and also to search out the tool that will enable Brute Bonnet to poison us so we can get the knockout here. So we attach and activate the poison ability, now with our Pokemon in the active as well. And then we go ahead and use Unhinged Scissors for the knockout. Take our penultimate prize down to just 1 now. And they, of course, promote a Snorlax. Unfortunately, they do have another counter catcher in hand. And that's one thing that we could always have tried to wait out, is waiting out their use of counter catchers. In some games, that's the best way forward. I think that we were close enough here that it was okay to not do it that way. And I'm beginning to really start to think about time as being our chief win condition at this point. They go ahead and pull out a Luxurious Cape, which they'd probably attach if they go through another round of penny play. Now that I have only 1 prize card remaining, there's no downside for them. We do see Arven coming back, getting another counter catcher, which is sort of not worthwhile. And I'm just going to poison and probably sit here. So at this point, our game plan right now is just to keep poisoning them and waiting, seeing if they screw up anywhere. Wait just a couple seconds while we think, is there any reason we need to change plan? Nope, so we go forward. And again, we're effectively attacking for 60 per turn. That's why this is such a good matchup, is that we can attack for 60 per turn no matter what is in the active. We see them Arven for a Nest Ball, but not play it. And we'll go ahead and just end turn. Now they're running to the point they have to do something this turn or we win. So let's see what they're going to do. They make a penny play, throw a new Snorlax into the active, bench the other Snorlax again. They didn't attach the Luxurious Cape there, which surprises me a little bit, but doesn't ultimately matter much. And then they go ahead and play the Nest Ball. So the Nest Ball here for them is kind of... I'll let you see what they get. They end up getting Chi-Yu EX. And for 1 energy, Chi-Yu can attack, discarding 2 cards off of our deck. So that's good for them in that they can accelerate the game when they get Chi-Yu into play. But it's bad for them because if they bring Chi-Yu into play, we're going to be able to retreat. Of course, we don't want to forget to poison their active because it changed. And then we go ahead and we pass. Now, I think we could have done something different on this turn. Instead of just poisoning and waiting, we could have gotten our Ultra Ball and played it in order to get a Bidoof. And the reason we want Bidoof is that we're going to want to be able to retreat into an attacking Pokemon soon. So we could have gotten Bidoof, had the other Ultra Ball in hand waiting to get Bibarel, and could have gone that way. Thankfully, he did not discard any of the pieces of the Pokemon we're looking at. So we can still start that play. It starts first by, of course, poisoning, attaching energy to the active, and getting Bidoof in play. We'll probably discard a Curry and the Bravery Charm. Ooh, I decided to discard the Stadium. I don't think that was the right play, because if they have any of their stadiums left to cause us problems, we won't be able to attack until we get to the Roseanne's backup, assuming that they don't discard it. So that was a little bit of a mistake. Now I am at this point also trying to be careful in case they were to play some way to discard energy, because that could be a problem for us as well. They don't, they just discard the next 2 cards. And from here, we want desperately to get to a double turbo energy. That's all we really need to be able to win the game. So we're getting Bibarel. We're going to go ahead and play the Iono. And then before we play Iono, we should use Town Store and make sure that we thinned out any tools from our deck. We do have a choice belt, so we pull it out so that that's one less card that is not double turbo that we'll draw into. And then the Iono cards will go to the bottom of our deck, so that's great. We're keeping an Iono there as well so that we can cycle further if we need to. Grant's unplayable, but we can draw 4 more cards. And since one of them is the double turbo energy, we can attach, then we'll retreat. And you can see our opponent there in the background giving us the thumbs up. I think that, you know, as a control player, it might be kind of fun to see someone actually like fight their way through the match, even if you're getting beaten. Someone that really sticks in there, sticks it through, and like wins the match has got to be a better experience than what the hate that you get a lot of times as a control player. But with that, we do retreat. We use the poison ability to poison Klawf, we attack, and we win the game. And that's how Klawf beats Snorlax Stall. Even when lots of things go wrong, when they play counter stadiums and make it so it's annoying for us to attack, and you know, have energy discards, and we make a few mistakes along the way, it still works out. And if any of that doesn't go wrong in those ways, it can go a lot faster and turn out even better for Klawf. Once again, if you enjoyed the video, if you got anything out of it, if you want to see more of this type of content, let me know. And I always appreciate likes and thumbs up, and certainly subscriptions. That's how I, get to keep doing what I'm doing. Thank you for watching. This has been Jeffrey, JGB 146 Blake for Hoopa Hideout, signing off.